Hello everyone, my name is Shambhavi. Hope you all are doing well. So basically, now today I'm just going to tell you about the time module in Python programming. I'm going to tell you that basically what time module is used for, how you can just use your time module in Python programming and all those things I'm going to tell you. Right, let's get started with the things for now. So first of all, whenever we just use any library, any module, something like this in Python programming, the very first thing is that we need to import that particular module that we are gonna use, right? So basically what I'll be doing is that, so here I want to use my time module, right? This is one of my modules which I is gonna use. So in that case, I would be importing my time module here. So for importing, I'll be writing here import. Okay, I would simply write here single like this import, and I would just add one here as time. So this is basically how we import a module in Python programming, right? So import, and after that I just need to write out the name for the module which I want to import, right? Let's say I just make a variable here, let's say value. Okay, let's say that's a variable which I just make it here. So value is equal to, now basically what I'll be doing is that let's say I just wrote time dot time, okay, and I just put on the bracket, right? So basically what does this time dot time actually returns? So this time dot time actually returns us the value, the seconds actually it returns the ticks. Okay, let me like write out the print statement, and in the bracket let me write out the value, and now let me run it. After that it will be more clear that what actually it returns, right? That basically I just mentioned that it returns the values, it returns the value, it returns the ticks actually. Now this value, this time dot time is actually not actually just use at like this only. We just use it whenever we just want to calculate that basically how much this function is taking time, how much this loop is taking time, and all those things whenever we just want to do that. So in that case basically we use this time dot time, okay. So I would just write, just do this like this here, right? I would just comment out. Now let's say I want to write a program in which I want to print all the numbers which are less than 10, all the positive numbers which are less than 10. So I would be doing that thing with the help of while loop as well as with the help of for loop. And after that, I would be seeing that basically while loop takes more time or the for loop takes more time in the executing of all this program which I am gonna write, right? So this is the whole idea that I am going to use, and I'm just going to like use this idea today. Fine. So now basically what I'll be just doing is that I would be first of all taking a variable, let's say a, and I'll be initializing it as 0, because first of all I'm just going to write the program for the while loop. After that I'll be moving towards the for loop. Okay. So first of all, I want to do it for the while loop. So I have taken a variable that is a is equal to 0. Now I want to print all of the positive numbers that are less than 10, right? So in that case, I'll be applying my while condition, right? So while, and in the bracket, let's say I will start a is less than 10, okay, and come inside it. Okay, this colon will come out of my bracket like this. Fine. Now basically what I need to do is that I need to write out my print statement. I would just add on my print statement, and let's say into that print statement I would write here Python and programming. Let's say this is a print statement which I just wanted to add here, which is Python programming. And I would not forget to do the increment, because if I'm not going to do that, it will basically turn up to my infinite loop. So in that case, I'll be writing a is equal to a plus 1, right? That I have added on here. This is okay. And as I mentioned that I want to check out that basically how much time this while loop will actually take to execute this program, right? How much time it will actually take. So in that case, I'll be using out my print statement here. Okay, print, and in the bracket I'll be writing while loop and the colon and the like this, and I will put one comma, and here I'll be using that time dot time. Okay, time dot time, and then the bracket like this here. Okay, and minus value. Okay, that is value. So value is basically the variable which we have defined above, and in this we had a store time dot time. So now this time dot time will actually calculate, it will actually give me the exact time, that basically how much time this while loop is actually taking for executing of this program that I have written. Fine, this is over for the while loop. Now let's come on to the for loop for now. So I'll be taking one another variable, and into that variable I will be defining some like values, and then I'll be defining the for loop. So I want to do it for value 2 as well. The value 2 will actually store my time that I have taken previously, right? Like this. So that was my value. So now let me just make it 2 instead of value. Let me make it as value 1. Okay, and let me make this as also value 1. Right now it's okay. Fine. Now I'll be applying my for loop. So for, okay, so it's for I in range. Okay, and into the bracket I'll be writing 10. That is basically my value inside the range. Fine. And basically I will again use that print statement, which is basically my while loop. So sorry, my printer statement, which is my Python. Okay, now I'll be just using it as, let's say, time module. Okay, because for both of these I'll just use different things. So for I in range in bracket I have written 10 print time module, right? That is okay. And like after coming out of my for loop, I'm writing here print, and inside this I'll be writing for loop. Okay, I would put the colon, I would put a comma here, and after that I'll be adding time at the brackets. Let me come down this side, and after that I'll be adding the minus sign, and into this I'll be adding value 2. Right, this is the value 2 in which actually I have taken this time as well. Fine. So this is the before time, this is the after time, and it's after that subtraction. Right. It will basically let me know that what time actually while loop is taking to execute and what time actually this for loop is taking to execute. Now let me quickly run out my program. Fine. Let me just come out like this. So see, first of all, 10 times Python programming has been printed for me. After that, it's just showing me that while loop is taking 0.0 seconds. And time module is also printed and will take me that like for loop is also taking 0.0 seconds. So basically, actually, what happens that while loop and for loop, they're actually at the same, like they run actually at the same time at the same speed, but sometimes it gives us a difference. I will just run it again. Let's see basically, right? So here I just got this thing. Now basically have a look that my while loop is giving me 0.0002167 somewhat seconds, and still my for loop is giving me 0.0 seconds. So that is why we always say that for loop is faster than while loop, because here see it is giving me some number of seconds, but here in my for loop it is simply giving me 0 seconds. Fine. So this is basically how actually first of all we just use out this time module in Python programming. This was a way how we just use it. Other than that, even we had got to know one more thing, that basically how to check out the time that this particular loop is taking how much time to execute, and another particular loop is taking how much time to execute, right? So I would just comment this thing because I have some more things to tell you, and just let me do it like this here. Fine. Right. Now, if you want to check out your local time, okay, we just want to print out the local time that you have right now. So in that case, basically how you can just print your local time with the help of the time module. Okay, so in that case, I'll be taking a variable that is local underscore time. That is time. Okay. Now in this basically I'll be using the time module which we have imported above. So time dot now ASC time. This ASC time will actually give me the present time which I am having. Right? It will basically give me the present time which I am having. So time dot ASC time, and after that basically what I'll be adding, I would be adding here time. Okay, time dot, and in the bracket local. So okay, that is local. Now I just want a local time, right, which I am just having right now. So that I want. So in that case, I just use out this function which is local time, and inside the local time bracket, I'll be adding time dot time. Okay, and in the bracket. So let me remove this one single I from here, and yes. So basically here I just got out that time dot time, which I just need to find out that what is the local time right now which I am having here with the help of my basically time module. And simply what I'll be just doing here is that I'll be simply printing out that local underscore time variable in which I have stored that thing. Let me just quickly even tell you once again that what I have done. So I have taken a variable which is local time. Okay, into that variable I have used out my time module. Right, after this use of this time module, I have put one dot, and after that I had used this ASC time. Okay, ASC time. Now, this will basically give me my present time, and into the bracket I have again used the time module and one another function from this time module, which is local time. And into the bracket I have used time dot time, so that will basically be helping me to give out the right time, present time which I am having. Let me now just run it for now. Okay. basically it is giving me THU, that is my Thursday, JUN is for June, and basically the time is date is 3. So it's 3 June, the day is Thursday, and right now the present time is 20:50:22. Okay, this is basically 8:50 and 22 seconds, right? So 8 minutes. This is 8:50:22, and here I have the year, that what year it is. So it is 2021, right? So with this, with the help of this time module as well, I can just get some information, such information with the help of this, right? So basically you had seen that how we just use out the time module. So for using out the time module, the very first thing that we actually do and that we actually apply is that we import the module which we want to use. So in our case, we were just trying to use the time module, right? So I've just imported that time module here. After that, I have taken some variables, compared the while and the for loop, and then I have tried to see that what is the local time, basically what is the present time that I am having here with the help of the time module. So the procedure was same. I would simply use a variable. After that, I will simply give it a time module. With the help of that module, I simply use a function, that is AST time, that will give me the present time. And after that, I simply use again my time module and the local time function. And inside bracket, I just print time.time, and then simply I just printed the local time variable in which I have stored the present time. Right? So I hope this is very clear to you, that basically how we can just use this time module in Python programming. And basically what are the functions of this time module, this must be also very clear to you. Right? So discuss about the threads in the advanced Python programming. Right now, what we are going to see that what we actually mean from threads. After that, basically what are the problems that occurs, how to make a thread in Python programming, and all those things we are going to see today turn by turn, right? So without wasting time, let's get started. And what I'll be doing is that I'll be first moving on to the one note here. So let me just open that thing here. Right. Now, first of all, I'd be telling you all the necessary details regarding the threads, that actually what are these threads, what are the problems in making threads, why just we do that thing, and all those things we'll be discussing right here. After that, we'll moving towards the programming thing of the threads, okay? So just let me come down here on this side, and let me just take this color. Hold on for a minute, right here. And let me give the heading for today's discussion topic, and that is basically the threads. So I'm just writing that here, threads, right? This is the topic of discussion that we are going to discuss today. So the very first thing comes, and the very first question in the mind comes after listening out the name for this topic is that what are actually threads, right? The very first thing that we need to discuss is that what are actually threads and why we just use them, right? So I'm just writing that thing for the very first thing. So I was just writing a thread is kind of like a process. It is basically kind of like a process, and basically it's sequence of what is actually a process. So it's basically sequence of control flow, right? Sequence of control flow, that basically how your program will run, what is the flow of your program, and all those things, right? So okay, just let me write out the correct spelling for the control, and here it goes as the flow. Right, so basically a thread is a kind of like a process, and what is actually a process? And a process, it's sequence of control of flow, right? This is actually a definition which comes here for the thread. So just understand it in a way that thread is actually a sequence of a control flow. It is a kind of sequence of a control flow, right? This is the definition which you can just say for the threads, right? Other than that, let me just tell you some more things regarding the threads, that basically what it consists and what it does not consist and all those things. So basically, now here except, I will just write that statement here as well. Just have a note of this as well in your notebooks. So except that, I would be just writing except that it exists, entirely. So that is entirely. Okay. Except that it exists entirely inside a process and shares resources resources. Let me just come down here and write on that thing, but before that let me just close this out. Okay, and shares resources. Basically this is the use of the threads, that basically it exists and it entirely inside a process and it shares the resources. Now what I just meant from resources. So let's say you're just working on any application, right? And that basically data is shared data. So that are actually share the resources, the data, the task, and all those things actually comes under the shares resources. Right, so basically this is about the threads, that what is the work of actual threads. So it actually shares out the resources. Other than this, in detail we are going to discuss, but this is an overview regarding that what are threads and basically what is basically use of the threads. Okay, now the third thing that comes is that I'll be just writing that thing here. A single process may have multiple threads of execution. A single process may have multiple threads of execution. So here a single process may have multiple threads of execution. So basically, let's say you are just writing a process. So in that process, there basically can be multiple threads, right? You can just it's not a like particular thing that you will just write only one thread inside the process. No, it's not the thing. You can just enter n number of threads inside the process for the execution. Right, so this is the meaning of the line, which is a single process may have multiple threads of execution. Okay, it's not the any case that it's basically it's not any restricted that you can just put in any one thread or one or two threads, something like that. No, it's not the case. Let's say you are just having a single process, and that single process you can just put upon multiple threads of execution as well, according to your requirement, whatever basically you are having, right? So now next thing that comes is that when it is most useful. Okay, so I'm just writing here useful when an application. Okay, useful when an application. Let me just come down so that I can just write even more properly. So useful when an application wants to perform many concurrent many I would just write as many concurrent task on shared data. So it is basically the main use of the threads is that it is basically useful when an application wants, let's say when an application wants to perform many concurrent tasks on the shared data. So in that case basically threads are mostly used. Now what I can just say about application in that case basically like what is the example for this particular case that I have taken, that when we want to perform many concurrent tasks on shared data and all those things. So in this case you can just like I would just write that think about a browser. Okay, think about a browser. Okay, inside in the browser what to think about, you can just like take the loading pages, the pages which you just like search on. So they basically load in the starting, right? Loading pages. Let's say you are having some animations, so in that basically that animations etc. So these are the example for the which we want to basically perform concurrent tasks on the shared data. This is actually how the data is shared, right? On the browser what we just do, we just like when we just want to Google something, we just click on the particular link and whatever the information is there that just comes. But in between that all of the process what actually does, the page is loaded, right? The page which we are actually looking for, the link which we had clicked, in that basically we are having a page, right? And that page needs to be loaded. Till the time it is not loaded, we are not able to see that what information are we getting from here, right? So that is actually which comes under the example of when we want to perform many concurrent tasks on the shared data, right? This is actually the example of this particular thing. So the main use of the thread is that when an application wants to perform many concurrent tasks on shared data, in that case basically the threads are especially used. Right, so basically I hope I had just first of all made this thing very clear to you that what are actually threads, and other than that what is the main use of the threads in the Python programming language. Right, this is absolutely clear. Now basically we'll be moving towards that what are the problems with the threads. Okay, we'll be seeing that basically what are the problems with the threads. So let me just quickly take out some color here and give on the heading here. So I'm just writing that thing, problems with threads, right? First of all we'll be seeing that what are the problems with the threads, and after that we'll be moving towards the code and all those things right here. So the very first problem that comes is scheduling. Okay, I would just write that thing, scheduling here. Now basically what I just meant from this particular word which I just written is scheduling. So just understand that thing in a detailed way, then we'll be seeing that more things, right? So here I can just write to execute. Okay, to execute a threaded program. Threaded program basically that contains the thread, right? So to execute a threaded program, comma, must rapidly switch between, must rapidly switch between, switch between threads. Okay, just let me give a space here. One second, let me just come down here. Fine. Switch between threads. So here it goes. So basically, when you just want to execute a threaded program, so in that case, basically you need to rapidly switch between the threads, between the number of threads which you have actually made. Okay. Now, how can this thing actually be done? So this thing can be done. So I would just write that this can be done by the user by the user process. Okay, actually there is one process which is called as user process. So this can be done by the user process. Okay, and that is basically the user level threads. Now basically what it is meant from user process, user level threads, that we'll be discussing in very detail whenever we just move towards the programming things. So basically the thing is that which we have discussed right now, that to execute a threaded program we must rapidly switch between the threads. So what basically how this can be done, that rapidly switching between the threads? So this can be done by the user process. Okay, and the user process actually contains the user level threads, right? Other than that, we have one more way for doing this out. Okay, so the other one which we have for doing this out is that it can be done by the kernel, kernel. Okay, kernel, we also have this kernel in this threads topic as well. Okay, this can be done by the kernel. So in bracket I'll be just writing that thing for this. So that is kernel level threads, right? So this is these are the basically scheduling things which comes under the problems with the threads, right? So to execute a threaded program must rapidly switch between the threads. So this can be done by the user process and even can be done by the kernel. Right now, basically another problem which comes is about the resource sharing. Okay, so the second problem for this threads is that resource sharing. Okay, and I'll be discussing that resource sharing here. So in resource sharing, basically it comes since threads share memory, right? That is absolute correct thing, and there is no confusion in that. That basically since threads share memory, right? They share actually the memory and other resources and other resources. So in that case, basically we need to be very careful resources. So in that case, basically you must be very careful while doing all of these things using the thread. So must be very careful. Okay, must be very careful. So basically since the threads share memory and other resources as well, so in that case basically we need to be very careful while doing all of these things actually. Okay, now next basically this thing under resource sharing is that, so basically operation performed in one thread operation performed in one thread could cause problem. It can basically cause the problem. So cause problem in an other. So basically whatever the operations you have performed in one thread, so that can basically cause the problem in the another thread as well, right? So this is basically the another problem which comes under the threads, right? That if you have performed one operation in one thread, so that can actually cause a problem onto another thread for you, right? This is the thing. So basically these two are the very important, like very useful problems in the threads which actually come. Now there are several more that we'll be discussing while the writing the codes only. I'll just not tell you that thing separately, but these are the two problems which actually come here. Okay, So the first one was that scheduling, that to execute a threaded program most rapidly switch between the threaded. So basically if you just want to execute a threaded program, so you just need to switch between many threads. Let's say you just need to go to the first thread, then let's say to the second thread, then let's say to the third thread. So that basically like makes a little bit of problem, right? Again and again going and changing the threads, and again and going to and like switching the tabs and switching the threads and all those things, right? So that creates a problem. So this is the very first problem that comes under the this threaded part, okay, this problem of the thread. So basically that can be done. Now basically what's the like reason for doing that, basically how we just can do that. So that can be done with the two ways. The first one is user process and the second one is kernel. So we'll be discussing about these things in the detail afterwards. Other than that, another problem which occurs is regarding the resource sharing. So basically, since the threads share more memory and other resources, you must be very careful while sharing the threads. Okay. Other than that, basically, whatever the operations are performed in one thread, that can basically cause problem into another threads. Right. So these are the problems which occur, and even I have just discussed that what are threads and what are the things that come under the threads. So basically from the next video, we'll be writing out the programs for the threads, and we'll be seeing that how to write a program for the thread, how to make a thread, basically how to execute that. Other than that, what are the functionalities and what are the functions we can perform, what are the functions we cannot perform, and all these things we'll be seeing that what are the problems with the threads, right? We had just discussed all of these things. Today we are going to discuss some more problems with the threads. And other than that, I'm just going to tell you some more things regarding the threads itself, right? So basically, let's have a quick revision that actually what we had just dealt in the previous videos. So basically, we had seen that what are threads, right? So the answer for that question is that basically a thread is kind of like a process, right? And what we just meant from process, so that is basically a sequence of control flow, right? Other than that, we had seen that except that it exists entirely inside a process and shares the resources, right? And we had even seen that single process may have multiple threads of execution. We had even seen this way, right? That basically, let's say we are having a single process, but that single process can even have multiple threads, right? That basically can be executed, right? Other than that, we had seen that when was it actually used, when we just use the threads, what's the use, right? So basically they are useful when an application wants to perform many concurrent tasks on the shared data, and we had even seen that what we just meant from many concurrent tasks on shared data, right? And after that, the problems with the threads were, the very first problem was the scheduling. So to execute a threaded program must rapidly switch between threads. This can be done by the user process. This can be done either by the kernel level threads, right? So basically, if we just want to execute a threaded program, so basically we just need to go and switch between many threads, many files we just need to switch, and then we just can execute a threaded program. So for this, basically, we were having two answers. This can be done by the user process or it can be done by the kernel level threads, right? Other than that, basically, we had seen regarding the another problem that was resource sharing. So in that basically what was happening, so in that since threads share memory and other resources must be very careful. So basically it was saying that while sharing the threads and basically memory, we need to be very careful while sharing the resources, right? And basically operations performed in one thread could cause problem in the another, right? This is the whole idea that we had discussed, and that was a quick revision. Now let's today basically discuss about some more things and some more let's see that basically what are some more things here, right? So let me just quickly take out a color here, and let's say that is this one right here. Fine. Okay, just let me close this window from here. Okay, now let's start. So my another problem which basically occurs is synchronization. So I would just write synchronization like this. Okay, this is the spelling for that particular thing. So my another problem which occurs in the threads is basically my synchronization. What things just come under this here basically? So the very first thing comes that threads often need to coordinate actions, to coordinate like this here actions, right? So this is the first thing that comes under this, that threads often need to coordinate action. That's absolutely true thing, right? That basically if we're just writing any like using any module or something like that, so basically that will be having many actions associated with that, right? Fine. Another thing that comes is that it can basically get the race conditions, can get, and I would just write in the bracket, not bracket, just semi-quotes that can get race conditions, right? Now basically what we just meant from actually the race conditions, so that is basically you can just call it as the outcome dependent, basically on order of thread execution. You can just say that the outcome dependent on thread execution, okay, on order of thread execution. So this is the whole idea regarding the race condition, okay, that what we just actually meant from this. Let me just put out a bracket here and write out the thing as well. So let me just write that thing, that is basically outcome dependent on on order of thread execution, so it means basically that we can just get out the race conditions as well. Right, now the third thing that comes is here, that is basically I would just write that often need to use locking primitives, okay, just let me write that and just let me come down first of all. Often need to use locking primitives like this, primitives, and in the bracket I will be adding the things here. Okay, just let me close this out. That is basically mutual exclusion, like basically mutual exclusion locks, and basically these are something that let's not add that thing here for now. So that is basically often need to use locking primitives, okay. These are the three things which are more like which come under the synchronization, and that is basically like that creates a problem while using out the threads, right? Now after this we have one more thing that is not, now this is not any problem, this is actually a new topic. So let me just write out like this. Okay, just let me give a minute and right here. Basically now this is not that particular same topic previously, it is a new topic, okay, and that is basically that new topic is thread scheduling. Like this here, right? Now basically we are just going to see that how we just do the thread scheduling when we just use out the thread module, and basically what's the procedure, how we just proceed in that thing, right? So the very first thing that comes under this is that basically it is that is basically tightly controlled by a global interpreter, lock and scheduler, and here this is scheduler, right? So this is basically the very first thing that basically that in the thread scheduling basically what happens. So it is basically tightly controlled by a global interpreter lock and the scheduler, right? Now let's move towards the second, and I'll be just writing here that only a single thread is allowed only a single thread is allowed to be executing in the Python interpreter let me just come down first of all. So only a single thread is allowed to be executing in the Python interpreter at once. So basically this means that at one time you can just execute one single thread in the Python interpreter. It's not the case that you have written multiple threads, and you will be allowed to execute all of them at a time. No, this is not the case here in this threading topic, okay. In this case basically you can basically execute only a single thread in the Python interpreter at once, okay. Now let's move towards the third one, and that is basically let's goes here, that is thread switching only occurs between the execution of individual between the individual byte codes, okay. So this is another thing that comes here, that you can just do this thread switching only and only between the execution of individual byte codes, okay. This is another thing that comes here, right? Let's move towards the fourth one for now, and that is basically, I would just write that long running, I would just write here that long running calculations, running calculations in C slash C plus plus, long running calculations in C and C plus plus can block execution, can block the execution of all other threads, let me just come down here, of all other threads, right? So this is the another thing which comes here, that long running calculations in C and C++ can block the execution of all other threads, right? Now let's see the last thing that comes here, that is number 5th, and that is basically however most input output, I'm just writing I slash O, this actually means the input output, okay? So however most input output operations like this, operations do not block. However, most input-output operations do not block. Right, so these are the 5 things that comes here under the thread scheduling. So that is basically, it is tightly controlled by a global interpreter lock and scheduler. Second thing comes that only a single thread is allowed to be executing in the Python interpreter at once. Third one goes that thread switching only occurs between the execution of individual byte codes. Fourth one goes long-running calculations in C and C++ can block execution of all other threads. And the fifth one goes that, however, most input-output operations do not block. Right? These are some things which come under this thread scheduling. Now we have just one more last topic to understand in the theoretical part for the threads, and that is basically the comments. Right? Let me just write the things for this topic as well. So comments. Now it comes that Python threads are somewhat more restrictive than in C. Okay, so the very first thing comes that in the comments that Python threads, okay, just one thing comes that Python threads are somewhat more restrictive than in C, right? In C also you're having, but in that case it was not more restrictive, okay? Right, the second thing comes that effectiveness. Let's talk about let me just write that effectiveness, T-I-V-E-N-E-S-S, okay? So effectiveness may be limited, it may be limited on multiple CPUs, on the multiple CPUs. So basically the effectiveness basically depends on the CPUs, right? Basically what type of CPUs you are actually having. And why this actually depends on the multiple CPUs, effectiveness depends on the, like, maybe limited on the multiple CPUs, and that reason is due to interpreter lock, okay? Due to interpreter lock, right? This is the reason that the effectiveness may be limited on the multiple CPUs, and that is the due to interpreter lock. Next we have the thread scan. Next I will be just writing that thread scan interact strangely with okay, that is like this, okay, right here, with thread scan interact strangely with other Python modules, okay, with other Python modules. Okay, so threads can interact strangely with other Python modules. Right, so that is basically the whole thing about the threads. Right, let me just quickly give you an overview about the comments that we have actually seen right now. Okay, so in comments, Python threads are somewhat more restrictive than in C. Right, other than that, the effect, okay, right here. Okay, just one second, right here. Effectiveness may be limited on the multiple CPUs, and that is basically due to the interpreter lock. And after that, threads can interact strangely with other Python modules, right? So basically, I have like assumed that you have got a clear and a fair idea regarding that what are threads, what comes under the threads, what are the properties, what are the problems, what are the other things that basically come inside the threads. Now basically we are just over with all the theoretical part for the threads. Now basically from the next video today we'll be seeing that how we can just make out the threads with the help of the classes and objects, right? We remember that we had already studied about the classes and objects, right? Now, in that case, basically, if you just want to make a thread with the help of that classes and objects, how you will be able to do that thing, right? This is the thing that we are going to see, and we had already seen that what are threads, what are the problems that occur, and basically we had seen the thread scheduling and all those things in the previous videos, right? Let's basically give it a quick revision, and after that, let's start writing out the code, right? Fine here. So this was a OneNote notebook in which we had written out the whole thing straight. That basically what is a thread? So basically a thread is a kind of like a process, right? It's a sequence of control flow. Except that it exists entirely inside a process and shares the resources. And then we had seen that basically a single process may have multiple threads of execution useful when an application wants to perform many concurrent tasks on the shared data, right? And even we had seen the example, right? Other than that, we had seen the problems with the threads. The first was the scheduling, right here. Then we were having the resource sharing, and at last we were having the synchronization. So these were the three problems that occurs in the threads. And after that we had seen the thread scheduling, and another topic in which we had seen that tightly controlled by a global interpreter log and scheduler. So only a single thread is allowed to be executing in the Python interpreter at once. So this was a very important thing that we had seen, that at one time you can only and only basically execute a single thread on a Python interpreter. Okay. After that, thread switching only occurs between the execution of individual bytecodes. Okay. Then long-running calculations in C/C++ can block execution of all other threads, right? And then even we had seen some things in the comments as well. So these were the things which we had already seen in the threads. Now basically today is the turn that we'll be seeing out that how to write out the program in the threads, right? So it's a type of a program. It's a type of a topic in which whenever you just want to write out this thing, in this case you just need to import a library. Without importing that library you can just not make a thread. Okay. So basically I would be importing that particular library, and that would be my import, and that is basically the threading library. Okay. This threading is another module which we are importing. You do not need to install this in your local devices or devices whatever you are using. You simply need to import this here. Okay. So here I'm just on my PyCharm IDE as well, right? So import, and then I've just written out the threading, right? After this, basically what I'll be just doing is that I'll be making out a class. As I mentioned that we'll be writing out the thread, we'll be making out the threads with the help of the classes and objects, right? So I'll be just making out my class here. So let's say the name for my class is example. Okay. So name for my class is example. And now basically in the bracket I'll be passing out the two parameters here. Okay, the first one is basically my threading module which I had like imported above, right? After that, basically, the next thing that I'll be importing is my thread, the thread that I'll be making here. Okay, just let me write THREAD like this, right? So these are the things which I'll be importing, which I'll be using here. Okay, so this is not a comma, this is a dot. So from my threading module, I am importing a thread here inside my class as an argument inside my class. Here, I am importing the thread module, like the thread function from my threading module. Just understand this step very carefully as it is very important one. Okay. So with the from my threading module here, that is which I have just written here. After that I just put out a dot here, and from that basically I am importing a function, and that function is basically the thread function, right? Let's come on to the next line. And here I'll be defining out my init function as we just do always, right? Init and underscore underscore and then out the brackets here. So self is automatically passed. Now basically what I'll be just doing is that I'll be just passing out some parameters. Let's say my parameter is a name, comma, a max. Okay, and I will just come on to the next line here. Fine, so any matter a and a marks are the parameters which I've just passed down inside this function which I had just made inside my class. Now basically I'm just using my threading module here. Threading, that is DING, okay, like this. So threading dot, and I will again be writing that thread. So that is basically with the help of my threading module, I'm just importing the thread, right? I'll be putting out a dot here and initializing it with the help of the init function, and inside the bracket I'll be passing out the self, because with the help of the self only I'm just going to access all of the variables which I'm having here, right? So I'm just doing that thing itself here. So threading is basically the module which we have imported. Thread is a function, and after that I've just initialized that with the help of the init function, and in the bracket self is passed, right? Now, next thing that comes is that with the help of my self function, I'll be trying to execute this thing, right? So I'll be writing self.name is equal to a name, right? So self.name is one of my variables in which I want to store the value which I have in the another variable which is a name, and a name is an argument which I have passed inside my function, which is def underscore underscore init underscore underscore, right? So this is the whole idea. So self.name is equal to a name. After that, basically I have self dot, and the next one I'm just having is marks. Okay, so self dot marks is equal to a marks. I'm just simply writing that uh, okay, just one second. Okay, I'm just simply writing this a name, a marks, so that it just basically differentiate with this name and this marks. Otherwise, there is no such hard and fast rule that you just need to write the a name and you just need to write the a marks. You cannot just write these things and something like that. There is no such thing. I'm just simply writing so that both of these things are differentiated a little bit, because if I just write self dot name is equal to name, self dot marks is equal to marks, so that could be a little bit of confusing while understanding if you are new to programming, right? So in that case only I'm just writing this a name and a marks. Otherwise there is no hard and fast rule that you just need to write this as well, right? You can just put it like simple as well, that is simple marks and simple name, right? Okay, that is done. Now basically I'd be defining a function that is def, and inside that let's say def details. Details is my function, okay, details, and in the bracket, okay, in the bracket self will automatically be passed because I had just made this function inside my class, right? So details will be one of like kind of my helper function. So helper function basically what it will do, it will basically help me to execute this name and marks which I have taken here, right? Only this is the thing of it, right here. So let me just write out the print statement, and instead of print if I just write out return here, return f string, and I just want to add here that basically the, okay, I would just write it like this, the name is, I would write it like this, the name is, and in the bracket I'll be passing out self dot name, okay, the name is self dot name, and I'll be and marks are, and in the bracket I'll be writing here self dot marks, right? This is the thing which I just want to pass out here. So in that case basically I just written. Now why I have just written the f string, because I wanted these values, let's say there will be value for any, a value will be a marks, right? I just want both of these values to come here in the between, because I'm just making a proper sentence here. So in that case, basically, I just passed on this if string. Simply, you can just use the print statement as well. That it totally depends on you, that what you just want to do, right? Fine. Now coming out of my class, I'll be making out the objects for this class, right? So, okay, name for my class was example, right? So let's say E1. Okay, E1 is equal to is one of my objects which I just made for my class, and that is basically the example. I will put down the brackets here, and I just need to give a name, right? Let's say the name is my name itself, that is Shambhavi. Okay, and other than that, basically what I need to pass is the marks. So let's say marks are, let's say 25. Okay, come on to the next line. I'll be writing here another variable, sorry, another object. I'm just making two objects for this particular class. Okay, E2. And here I would be just writing example. And let's say another name is Ria. Okay, let's say another name is Ria. And let's say marks are 20. Right, this is the thing which I've just given on and passed on here. After this, what I'm just doing is that simply I'll be writing here my object's name, that is E1 dot, and I'll be just writing here start. Start is a basically function, predefined function which we have here in that thread. Okay, and after that I'll be just writing E1, E2 dot start, and the brackets like this. Now basically why I am just writing the start, so basically we just like when we just used to write the simple programs in the classes and objects, so what we just do in that case, basically what we did is that we just like write out the print statement, and inside the print statements we just like used to run out the program and call out the function, and we just get out the desired output. So when you are just doing this thing with the same with the help of the thread, so in that case this start is a function which is basically held for printing out the results here. So I would just run out my program here now. Okay, and basically it is giving me like this right here. Okay, now basically what I'll be just doing is that I just returned here, I just not printed. So in that case, basically it is giving me. So let me just write it like this here, print. The name is, and I will just write out, pass out my self string inside this. Right now, this is absolutely fine, and I'll just close it at the last because in that case it is return. So return will only and only work at that condition when I'm just passing out the function, right? So in that case only it works. So right here, now just let me remove out this statement as well because it will not work properly with the print statement. Let me remove that out from here. And here this thing as well. Right, so now inside my print statement, I'll be just passing here out the str, and inside that bracket, I'll be just writing, let's say self dot, and I was having marks, right? Self dot marks. Okay, that is okay. And other than that, what I was having, I'll just put out a plus sign here. Let's just give some spaces. After that, again, I'll just put out a plus sign. Where's that? Right here. And again, I will just write here str, and into the bracket, I'll be just writing self dot marks, right? This is the whole idea. And now I would be just running out this thing here. So basically, now what I just need to do is that I just need to come out here, and at last I just need to write out print, and here basically it would be \n exit, right? And now I will be just running it once again this side. Fine. So now basically what is happening actually, so thread underscore 1, that is e1 dot start, e2 dot start, and e1 e2, that is absolutely fine. And basically inside threading is done, thread is done, and that is equal to example. Okay, let me just check over. Okay, example is absolutely fine. And passing out the values is done. e1 dot start, e1 dot e1 and e2 is done. Okay, so basically here I have just one thing to tell you very carefully. Actually, this mistake has been made, but like it is good for me, so that I can just let you know even this thing as well here in this program as well, so that you just do not make this mistake afterwards. See here actually what I have just written, I have written the function name as details, but here when you are just making out the thread, so in that thread basically we have a rule that you will be making the name of the function as run only. Right, run is a type of a helper function that basically helps you to execute the threads. So other than this run, if you are just trying to write any of the function name, okay, other than this run, if you're just trying to write out any other function name, so that will basically not at all work. That will result you the blank output as you were able to see previously. So this mistake was made by mistake, and basically it was good for you, so that I can just let you know this thing as well. Otherwise for you also it will basically show you the blank output as well, right? So def run. So you just need to write out the name for the function that is run only. Other than this, none of the functions are allowed. Let me now just run it quickly here. Okay, 25, 25, 20, 20. My things were Shambhavi and 25. Okay, here I just passed the marks 2 times. So let me write this instead of marks. Let me write this as name. Okay, that is name right here. And now just let me quickly run it once again for now. Right, now basically it is giving me the desired output, and the correct output, that is I'm just getting here Shambhavi 25, Riya 20, and at last I'm just getting here the exit statement which we have actually printed, right? So just make sure that do not write any other function name, that will actually not at all execute. You need to write out the name for the function that is run, and simply you just need to write out the run. If you are just going to make any function from your side, that will basically not at all, like basically it's not the case that it will show you the error, but that will not give you the desired output. It will basically show you the blank spaces, right? So basically I hope that you have got a clear and a fair idea that basically how we just can make the threads with the help of the classes and objects. So the main thing that you need to keep in mind is that you need to pass out the threading.thread here. After that you need to make it with the help of the init function, and simply you need to take the name of the function as run, and at last basically it's the same. And here you do not need to write out the name for the function which you had made. Simply if you just want to run here in the thread, so we just write that e1 dot start and e2 dot start. So e1 and e2 are basically the objects, right? And simply here it goes like the start, right? So start are the functions which are held for like writing and executing these things, right? So I hope I just made these things very clear to you that how you can make the programs in the with the help of the threads and the classes and the example for the program, and that is basically for the threads, right? Now we'll be seeing today that if you just want to in the previous video we had seen that how you can just make it with the help of the classes and objects, right? Now basically today we are going to say that if you do not want to use the classes and objects, then basically what is the way that how you will be able to write out the program. Right now today we are just going to see these things, that basically if you just do not want to use out let's say classes and objects, so how you will be making out and writing out the program for the threads, right? This is the whole idea for today's video that we are gonna discuss. So without wasting time, let's get started with the things, and the rest of the things I'll be letting you know in the video itself, right? Okay. So basically, let's start here. So first of all, what I will be just doing is that first of all, I'll be importing out the module which actually I would be needing for making out my program today. That is basically for using this thread function, I just need to import out the module which actually contains that, right? So what I'll be just doing is that I'll be writing here import, and then I'll be just importing here as threading, D-I-N-G, like this, right? So here basically I am importing the threading. Right now, next basically coming on to the data threading, basically that is my I'm importing that right here. Next, I'll be importing out the time module as well, because I'll be just using that time module here for like finding out some time and all those things. So in that case, I'll be just importing out this time module as well, right? So these two modules that I'll be using, first one is my threading and another one is my time. So both of them are being imported here. Now, in the previous video, we had seen how you can just use the classes and objects here, right? Now, today we'll be seeing that how you can simply make it with the help of only functions and basically without using the classes and objects, right? So let me just write that. So here I'll be defining out a function. Okay, let's say my function is square. Okay, that is SQU like this. Okay, let's say my function is square, which I have just taken. And inside the bracket, I'll be passing out a num here. So I just wrote here as num, right? So def is square, and in bracket, I have passed out the num. Now, basically, I just want to add out a print statement here, and inside the print statement, let's say I want to write that I would be calculating the square root of the given numbers which I'll be having, right? So I would just write that. I would just add on here that I would just add that this function, let's say this function, this function will calculate square root. This function will calculate the square root. Let's say this is the system, this is the statement which I actually want to give out here, right? That I have done. Now I'm just simply applying one of my conditions that for I in, okay, now here inside the num, let's say I just want to, instead of num, let's say I just pass on a variable that is a. Okay, so for I in a, and I'll just put out the colon and come on to the next line. Okay. Okay. So now basically for I in a, that is, and instead of this, let me just write it out like this. For n in a, okay. Now basically, okay, let me change it to I only. That actually is a general form which we actually use. I just do not want to confuse you while taking some different variables so that you will just confuse. Okay, just do not want to do that thing. So for I in a, and here I'll be just writing time dot sleep. I just want to use out this. This is the reason that I have just imported my time function. So because here time is the module which we have imported, right? And from that particular module, I just want to import a function that is sleep. Now that sleep function will actually what do? Actually, what I just want is that, let's say my first square root of a number has come. Then I just want that it should like wait out for some seconds, and after that the second should come. After that the third, after that the fourth. So this is the whole idea which I just want to be basically appear here, so that I just want it to come in a proper time interval, right? So let's say here I will just apply 0.5 time for sleep 0.5. So it will basically like my first output for the square root will come. Okay, after that it will stop for 0.5 seconds. Okay, again after that it will, my second output will come. Then again after 0.5 seconds my third output will come. So this is the procedure that will actually go on here, right? So time dot sleep in bracket is 0.5. Now let's come on to the next line here, and basically I just want to print out my statement, and that is basically Okay, let me write the correct spelling that the square is, and I will just remove this one I here, square is. I would just put on the colon and space given here, comma, and here I'm just writing a multiplied by a. This is how we actually calculate the square, right? This is actually how we calculate, right? So in that case, I just applied that thing here. Fine. So here all the things are actually mentioned very clearly that first of all I just made out a function that is a square, and inside that I've just passed on a parameter that is a argument. Okay. After that I just used out my one of the print statements, and in that print statement I just written out a statement that is this function will calculate square root, right? After that this function will actually calculate the square root. After that, basically, I have for I in A. Now, I is basically one another variable which I have taken. So, for I in A, basically, I just want to do the iterations here. And time dot sleep 0.5. So, it is given a sleep time here 0.5. That after 0.5 seconds, give my second output. After again 0.5 seconds, give my third output. And procedure goes on like this, right? Then after that, my print statement, I have just written that a square is, and here I have just calculated out my square. Right, this is done for the square. Now, similarly to this, I just want to make another function that will actually calculate the cube here. Okay. So let's say my other function is def cube. Okay, and into the bracket I would be again passing the same parameter which I have passed on for the square, because I want the numbers to be having the, like, I just give some numbers and that numbers will be having the square and the cube as well. Okay, for the same numbers. So in that case, basically I have just passed on the same variable here, that is a. Right. Now inside my print statement I would simply write print, and here I would be just writing calculate the, okay, I would just write the same statement as we have written the above side. So just write here that this function will calculate, okay, let me just come down the side right here. So this function will calculate the cube. Okay, this function will calculate out the cube, right? Now come on to the again next line. So I would just again apply my loop that is for I in A. Okay, I is my iteration that will actually take place. So for I in A, and coming to the next line, I would just again add on here time dot sleep. Okay, and let's say I would just write that time dot sleep as 0.5, the same which I have given previously. Okay, and in my print statement like this, print. Okay, let me just correct out this spelling here. Right, so print, and in the bracket I'll be just writing cube. Cube is, put the colons here, put a comma here, and just multiply a 3 times. A multiply A, like this, right? So this A is being multiplied 3 times, and that will actually result me the output of this cube, right? This will actually result me the output. Come on to the next line here. Now, okay, instead of this dot, just put the comma here, right here. Okay, come on to the next line here. Now, I would be just coming outside here. Okay, now basically, I'll be just defining an list. Okay, so I would just write here my underscore list. Okay, my underscore list, and like this. And let's say I'll just pass 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, let's say these are the things which I just passed on here. Now, what I would just do, I would just make a variable that is let's say t1, and that will basically get the total time for me to execute the function. Okay, let's say I just want to find out that what is the total time in which this function is actually executing. So in that case, I would just make a variable t1, and in that I would just write time dot time and put on the brackets like this. Okay, so this will basically help me check out that input, that basically how much time is being taken to calculate the final output of this program which I'm just writing out. Okay, now, and simply I would just call out my functions. So my function first one was square, and in bracket I need to pass my underscore list variable, because in that only I've just stored out the numbers which I just want to print, right? For which actually I just want to get the square and the cube. And I would be just doing the same thing for the cube as well. So cube and my underscore. Okay, let me write out like this. Cube my underscore list. Like this. Okay, that is done actually. And okay, let me just leave out one space line here and like right here also. Right, now I just want to print out that time as well, right? So for that I would just add one print statement here, because till now I've only stored that in a variable. I haven't printed that, right? So basically print, and I would just write here that total time taken is. Okay, the total time taken by my threads is. I would put a comma here. I would just write time dot time bracket minus t1, my variable in which I have actually stored out the time. Right now, basically what I would just do is that I would just simply run out my program now. Okay, so cannot multiply a sequence of non-integer type list. Okay, so here let me just write, see that what's happening. Okay, so let me just remove out that my underscore list, and instead of that, let me just quickly take out, let's say, ARR. Okay, that is basically defining out the array. I should remove this as well, and this is let write ARR here, and inside there as well. Yeah, okay. Now let me just quickly run that once again. Okay, is it showing me some error? No, it's not showing me. Let me quickly run that out here. Okay, so it is saying that cannot multiply sequence by non-integer of type list. Okay, so it is saying me type error. Let me just check above that what actually we had made. So time dot sleep is I for I in A. That is absolutely fine. A multiplied A, I have just taken A, right? And here also I have taken A multiplied A. That is absolutely fine. So basically what error it is actually showing me. Let me just figure that out. So for, let's say, okay, cube is given, absolutely right. Time is given. So for I in A is actually the variable which we have taken, and that is absolutely fine here. Okay, so basically here actually what we need to do is that instead of this A, I need to take I multiplied by I, because I is my iteration that will actually take place, right? So in that case, I just need to take I multiplied by multiplied by I. Okay, like this. Now it's absolutely fine, right? Now let's quickly run out our program once again, and let's see the output, that basically what it is calculating. So just see that after 0.0.5 seconds, my output is coming to me. You are able to see, right? So, firstly, it came that this function will calculate the square root. So, the square is 1, 4, 9, 16, 25 and 36. After that, it showed that this function will calculate the cube. Then the cubes are given, and this is the total time that is taken. Okay. Now, after each and every 0.5 seconds, you were able to see that my answer was coming. Let me quickly make it to 0.7 so that you are able to see more clearly that actually what is happening here. Now I will just zoom that. Now see, after every 0.5 0.7 seconds, my output is coming, right here. Fine. Now basically you have just got that. Why I had just put that thing here, and now my final time that I'm just getting here is 7 point something, right? That is my total time taken for my thread to hold my whole thread to execute, right? So this is actually how we just write out a program for the threading, right? This is actually how we just write out the program for threading. This is actually how we just like use the things here. Okay, so here instead of that it would be I, because I is my iteration, and that only I just want to do here, right? That is 1, then it goes to 2, then it goes to 3, then it goes to 4, and then it goes to 5, then it goes to 6, right? So basically, I hope I just made this program very clear to you that how I'll be writing out the program, I'll be applying the concepts, and basically I'll be applying all the things. Now you had seen that how to write a program with the classes and objects. You had seen how to write a threading program with the help of the like functions. Okay, now basically today we are going to combine the classes and objects and even the function, and we are going to see that how we just write the program for the combination of the basically classes and the functions, right? This is the whole idea that we are gonna follow today. Great, let's get started with the things for now. So the very first thing that I'll be just doing here is that I'll be importing out my threading module. Import, and here it goes the threading. Okay, so very first thing that we do is import threading. Now next, basically what I'm just gonna do is that I would be importing the time as well, because I'll be including that module as well here in this example. So for that case, I'll be just writing here import time. Okay, these are the two modules which I'll be needing, the threading one and the time one. Other than that, basically what I would just do is that I'll be just taking a variable here. Okay, let's say my variable is a, and I would just assign as to 0. Now basically why I am just doing that thing here, that I'm assigning this value as 0, so that thing you will just get to know in a little while, right? As soon as I just proceed with the program, in that case you'll be getting to know that why I'm just writing this thing. Okay, let's come on to the next line here, and let's start making the class. So my class is that class, and that class is, let's say the name for that particular class is student. Okay, inside the bracket I would be writing here threading comma, it's threading dot thread. So that is basically from my threading module which I have imported above. I just want to use out my thread function. This actually means this thing, right? I would just put on the colon and come to the next line. Okay. Here basically I'll be just defining out my init function. So def underscore underscore init underscore like this. Okay, and into the bracket the self is automatically passed, right? Self comma. Now let's say there are three things. There are two things which I just want to pass here. Okay, so let's say let's say one is a name. Okay, the first one is my a name, and second one is my a standard, and let's say third one is my a marks. Okay, right. And okay, let's see, these are two things. And other than that, I just want to pass out one more parameter here, that is a counter. Let me just write that a counter here. Okay, right here. Fine. Now basically come on to the next line here, and here I will just again using that threading dot thread. Threading dot thread, and I would just put one dot here. I would just write underscore underscore, and I would just initialize the threading dot thread, right? Underscore underscore, and in the bracket I would be just passing here the self, right? This is actually done. Now come on, this procedure we had actually seen when we had seen about that how to make out the like write the threads with the help of the classes and objects. In that case basically we had previously seen this thing as well, right? Okay, so now here I will just write self dot name is equal to a name. Okay, and after that goes the self dot standard is equal to, okay, just 1 second, right here. Next one goes like self dot standard is equal to a standard. Okay, so self dot name is equal to a name, self dot standard is equal to a standard, right? And after that it goes self dot counter is equal to a counter. Okay, so these all the three parameters are actually made here. Now after this basically what I would be doing is that I will just finding out the function here, that is def and run. Remember that in the last video I had told you this thing very strictly, that whenever we just try to make some function inside the class and objects when we are using thread. So in that case, we strictly make out the name for the function as run only, right? I have just told this thing in the previously, right? That we just give it a name as run. Other than that, if we just try to give any other name, so that will basically result in some errors, right? So this is the whole idea behind this thing. So def run and in bracket it is self. Coming on to the next line, I would just write here print. Okay, now in this I would just write print, and okay, so print, I would just write that name is, I would just put a colon here. Okay, I would just put one plus sign as well, and here I would just be just writing self dot a name. Okay, print name is self dot a name. After this, let's see here I would just use print underscore time. Now you know that this is a very new thing which I'm just actually using here. Now what is this print? Okay, just let me first of all remove this out. Just let me do not include that thing. Okay. Let me just do something else. After this I would just write print, and let's say I'm just gonna write that print name is, and I would just write here print standard. Okay, and standard is, I would just put a colon like this. Again I would just put one plus sign, and that is self dot standard, like this, right? Okay, these are the statements which I have written. Now basically I was saying that we'll be seeing that how to combine the classes and the objects. So for that basically I would be coming out of my class, and now here I'll be just defining my function with the name whatever I just want to do here. Okay, so def, and here basically let's say the name for my function is def, and that is, let's say, present underscore time. Okay, present underscore time. Now inside the bracket I would be just passing out some parameters. So the first parameter that I would be just pass out here is the thread, that is thread name. Okay, this is the first parameter that I'll be passing, thread underscore name, let's say. Okay, second parameter that I'll be passing is the, let's say, delay time. Okay, so that is delay underscore time. Okay, I will just put one comma here, and after that let's say I just want to pass out that counter which I had stored above, right? So that is counter, and instead of that counter it is actually a counter. Okay, put on the colon and come to the next line here. Now basically I would apply a condition here that while a counter, just put one colon, okay. And before that, just let me do one thing here. Let me just write out one statement here. That is, I would be just writing out the name for my function, that is present underscore time, okay. And into the bracket, I'd be just writing self dot name, comma, self dot counter, okay. Self dot name, comma, self dot counter, and let's say comma, and here let's say I would be just giving something like let's say 6. Okay, now what is the self dot name? So self dot name is my thread name, the self dot counter is my delay time, and the 6 is my a counter. Got that? Come on to the next line here. So while a counter, my condition starts applying here. Okay, now I would just apply one condition while. Now above we have taken a variable that was a, right? Now this is a case for which I have just taken out this variable, okay? So while a, this is my condition, okay? That is if, okay, sorry, yeah, why if a, okay? This is my condition if a, that is if 0, right? In that case, I would just write here thread underscore name dot exit, okay? If basically if 0, that is basically if the condition is 0, if the a counter is 0, then in that case basically simply exit it out, okay. And basically I would just write here time dot sleep, okay, and into the bracket I'd be just passing delay underscore time, okay. Right, come on to the next line here, and here I'm just using out my print statement print, and that is basically %s colon %s. I would just write that thing here. I'll just put a % sign, and okay, this % sign, and into the bracket I would just start writing that is thread underscore name. Let me just come down first of all, right? So thread underscore what is this bracket for? Right here. So thread underscore name, comma, that would be time dot c time, and in the bracket it is time dot time, and the brackets like this. Now basically if you have just watched out my previous video, so you would be getting that actually what I'm just doing. So basically it will display my output while taking some time, okay. It will basically display my output while taking some time, okay. And here I would just write a counter is equal to -1 like this, okay. Now basically I have made the classes, so for that basically I'm just going to make the object, right? So in that case you just call it as we are going to make some threads. So let's say I would be just giving it as, let's say S1, okay. S1 is equal to name for my class, that is a student, and into the bracket I would be just passing out. Now what do I need to write out here? Okay, so right here, now basically what do I just need to put on I need to write it outside, right here. So S1 is equal to student, and I'm just giving out some values here. Let's say, okay, so what parameters we had passed here? According to this, we had passed out the a name, and then we had passed out the standard, and then we had passed out the counter. Okay, fine. So according to that only I'm just passing out the things here. So first of all I'll be just writing out the name, okay. First of all I'm just writing out the name. So let me come here, and let's say name is a, okay. After that what do I have? After that I have standard, so let's say that is 10, and after that I have a counter. So let's say my counter is let's say 0 1, and let it be 1 only, okay. After that I will just make S2 is equal to, that is a student, and in the bracket basically now it would be B, comma, let's say standard is 11 and the counter is, let's say, 2, okay. Now just come on to the next line, and now basically I'll be writing out the code for the starting of my new threads, okay. So that is basically, that is S1 dot start, okay. S1 dot start, and that is basically other than that S2 dot start, and in the brackets like this. Right, now if we just try to run my program here for a while, student object has no attribute a name, okay. Let me just check out that what mistake we had actually made. And okay, self dot a name, okay. I just need to remove this a from here, that is simply name, okay. Now just let me quickly run it once again, okay. So now just have a look that it is printing me the things after dealing of some time, right? You're just able to see that once something is coming, then another, then another, then another, like this it is coming, right? Now basically why this is happening? So this is basically happening due to the things that I have given above. Let me just go above here. Right, so because of that, it is basically happening. Now, just let me quickly close this out for a here, so that is terminate. Fine. Now, okay, self.count is 6 right here. Now, this 10 is done, this 1 is done. Now, basically, start is done. Now, basically, I've just used another function, that is s1 dot join. Okay, and then the brackets like this. And I would just using s2 dot join and then the brackets like this, right? And now I would just again try to run this program for a while. Okay, now basically you are able to see that again it started printing me the result, the answers, it started printing me the same thing, right? So basically I hope that you have got a clear and a fair idea that how we just write out this code, how we just use out this particular threading with the help of the function and with the help of the classes as well. So here basically in this example I have joined the classes and even I have joined the example, and at last if you just want you can just add on a print statement here that that exit the main thread. If you just want you can just add out this statement at the last as well, so that when you just a program has completely run, so after that you can just get a statement, print a statement like this, that exit the main thread, right? So this is how we just combine out the classes and the functions for making out the threads, right? So I hope I just made this thing very clear to you, that how you can just write out a program with a combination of the classes and with a combination of the functions. Now here basically my main motive was to show you how to combine the classes and how to combine out the functions, right? So this is going to see that how we can just make out a thread program, how we can just make out a thread with the help of the functions and the main function. We all know that what is main function, right? That if name is equal to main, that is the main function which we have in Python programming, right? Now basically today we are going to see that how we can just make out that main function and the use of the functions, and how you can just make out the threads, right? This is the whole idea regarding the today's program that we are gonna write. Okay, so that program will be writing for the threads only. So for that basically I'll be just needing out the threading module. Okay, previously we had already seen that how you can make the threads with the help of the class and objects, how you can make the threads with the functions, how you can combine the class and object and functions and make the threads. Now today we are going to see that how you can make the threads with the help of the functions and the main function of the Python programming language, right? Let's get started for the things now. So my very first thing that I'm just going to do here is that I'm going to import the threading. Okay, import threading. So this is a module which allows us to make out the threads in the Python programming language. This threading is a module, right? So I've just imported that module for the very first thing here. Okay, next basically what I'm just doing is that I would be making out my function which I just want to use here. Okay, so let's say my function name is def, and let's say I want to find out the square and the cube of the numbers. Okay, so in that case I would just write def, and then I would simply use out here, let's say my function name is okay, find underscore, that is like find underscore is square. Okay, this is the name for my function which I have made, def and then find underscore is square, right? This is the name of the function. Now what I would just do after this, that I would just put out a bracket here, right? And after putting out this bracket, what I would just do is that I would pass out a parameter inside this function which I have made, right? Let's say a is the parameter which I just made passed on inside this function. Okay, now what this function actually will do, so this function will actually calculate the cube for me. Now how to insert the doc strings and all those things, that I think that I do not need to repeat out here, because we had already seen all of these things in a very detail in the previous video. Okay, so I would just not repeat that thing here itself. I would simply use out my print statement here, and inside the print statement I would write cube is, put on the brackets like this, and I would just put a dot and I would just write here format, and inside the bracket I would just write a multiplied a. Okay, I would just write it like this. Okay, and here I would just put out these brackets like this. Okay, so basically here we had just find it out the cube, right? I just written out the statement to find out the cube. Now same procedure I'll be applying for the cube as well. Okay, so this one was for the square. Just one second, I need to find out the square. This is how we do. Okay, now I just make a function for finding out the cube. So div, so that is find underscore cube. Okay, into the bracket the same parameter would be passed. Now I would write out my print statement here, which I just want that, and here also I would just write a square. First of all, is square is. Okay, now basically what I would just do is that So for my cube, I would just first of all use one of my printf statements, and here I would just write cube is, and these okay, let me just put out the colon and put it like this. I would just give it a dot, and here I would just add on the format, that is format, and into the bracket I would just pass a multiplied a. These three, I would just multiply the a three times so that I can just write out the cube. Right, so now I'm just using this format so that basically I do not need to use any other variable or something like that. Simply I can just use out this format, and that will basically result me whatever is written inside these brackets. Okay, so it will basically, this one will give me the cube, and this one will basically give me out the square. Okay, now next basically what I would just do is that I would just come down here. Now I'm just not calling out my functions here outside the main function. You know why? Because if some, like, because of some use, I import out this function onto any other I import out this function on this file, and a function, I just call a function onto any other file. So because of that, simply one function is called, but because of that all of the functions will be called, and I'll be getting the output for all the functions there, right? This is a problem with the main function, right? So that is the reason that I'm just writing the and calling out my functions inside the main function only. So my main function is that if name is equal to main, like this, right? This is how we just define out the main function, right? If name is equal to main. Now what I would just do is that I will be making two threads, okay? Two threads for these functions which we have used above, okay? Which we had made. So let's say my thread is, let's say I'll be writing a1. Okay, let's say a1 is a variable. Let's say this is one of my threads, okay? Now how to make that? So for that, first of all, I would just use the threading module which I have imported above, and from that I would just use out the thread function, right? This is actually how we just make out the threads, right? I just use a variable that is a1, and threading is my module which we have, and thread is one of the functions which we have from that module. I would put out the brackets here. And now I would just use out a parameter that we have target. Target is one of the parameters that we have inside this inside this threading function. Okay, we have this main parameter. Okay, so target is equal to, and here basically I'll be using out the calling of my functions. That first function was my find underscore square, right? Find underscore square. So this was my first function, right? That I have written here. I would put on a comma here, and now what arguments do I want to give it to this particular function which we have? Okay, so now this function will be taking only one single argument, right? Let's say I just want a cube of a number, square of a number, that is 2. Okay, so I would just write 2 and put out a comma like this. Okay, this is the procedure, that how we just add on the things here, right? Let me just come down now. I would take the variable that is a2 here, okay? Other than that, I would just write here threading. Threading is the module that I have used here, threading dot. And other than that, I would be just using here the thread. Thread is basically the function from my threading module, right? Inside the bracket, I would be again adding the target. Like this, target is equal to find underscore cube. Okay, target is equal to find underscore cube. I would put a comma here. And other than that, we have the args, that is basically the arguments, and into the bracket I would again write the same one because I want the cube of the number, that is 2 only. Like that I have done. Now basically what I would be just doing is that I would be starting out my first thread and my second thread. Okay, we need to start that. So simply I would write a1 dot start and put on the brackets like this. So this means I would just put out a comment here, and this means starting of my thread 1. Here I'm just writing out the starting format thread 1, right? This is how we just start out a thread. After that, I would just put a a2 dot, and here I would just add the start. Again, I would put out the bracket, and this is how, and I would just put on the command, and I would just write that starting of my thread 2. This is how we actually start out my second thread. So these are the ways how we just start. So whenever we just want to access out the threads, in that case basically we just try to start these threads. Okay, after that, now basically we have one function that is join. Now why we just use that join function? So as to we just actually wait until the first is completely executed. So for that thing, for doing that thing, I would just simply use a dot join. So this means that we are waiting till the thread 1 is completely executed. So I will just write here waiting till the thread 1 is completely executed. Okay, waiting till the thread 1. Okay, waiting till thread 1 is I would start on that thing as well here, completely executed. Okay, execute, right? We are just waiting till the thread 1 is completely executed. After that, I would just write a2 dot, and here I just again use that join here. So now here basically I am waiting till the thread 2, waiting till the thread 2 completely executed like this. Okay, and here I would just add is, and here I would even add is, right? Okay, done. So I would just come to the side and just let me come down here. Fine, I have just written here. And basically at last, let's say I just want to print out a statement. As soon as all these things are done, I just want to print out a statement that is completed. Okay, so this is how actually we just write out a program for the with the main function, and with the help of the main function and with the help of some functions. Okay, I will just try to run this for a while right here. Basically, now just have a look at what answer I'm just getting. So I'm just getting that squared is 4 and the cube is 8, and at last I'm just getting here as completed. So basically in the square one, why I have written that a multiplication a like this, right? So because of that only I am just getting here 4. That is basically that the square is completed, and inside my cube I have written a multiplied by a. So because of that I am getting here that cube is 8, right? And at last I'm just getting out the completed. Right, now I would just like to quickly summarize this out, whatever I just mentioned in this particular video. So first of all, I've just imported out my threading module, which we are having here. So I've just imported this particular module. Next, what I have done, I have made a function with the name of find underscore squared, and I passed a parameter inside this. Okay, let's say that is a. After that, I simply used out my print statement, and there I just wrote all the things that I just wanted to be printed, and the a cross a, that is basically giving me the square. Then I just used the another function that is find underscore cube, and for the same I've just applied the same all of those things, right? Then I made out my main function. I made two of my threads A1 and A2, and I just made that with the help of the threading module and the thread function. Okay. Inside the bracket, what was the target? My target was a name for my function, that was find underscore square. What about the argument? So argument was only one, that is my 2. Number is 2. Other than that, I can just put any of the number whichever I just wish. Then my second thread was made, that was A2. With the help of my threading module and the thread function, my target was to find out the cube and the arguments was 2. Okay. Other than that, I want to start my thread. So in that case, I just use a1 dot start. I want to start my thread 2, that was a2 dot start. Then I want to just like wait till the thread 1 is completely executed. So for that case, I just use a1 dot join, and I just use a2 dot join, and at last I simply printed out the completed. So this is basically how we just use out the functions and how we just use out the main function and normal functions together to make a thread. Right, I hope that you have got a fair and a clear idea regarding this particular topic that I have told you today. Right, say that how just we do out the multi-threading with the help of the threads in the Python programming. Right, so we are just gonna say that how do we do the multi-threading here. Right, so let's get started with the things. So the very first thing that I'll be doing is that I'll be importing out the threading library. Okay, in actually Python 3 we do not import thread because thread does not work. Okay, so in that case basically what we do is that we import the threading. So we just write here import, and here goes the threading. Okay, this is how actually we just import that. Right, and after that even I'll be importing one module as well, that is OS, that is my operating system. The full form for this OS is actually operating system, right? Now that depends on you, you want to use this or not. The example which I'm taking, in that basically I just use it. So I have just written this OS here, that is importing out the operating system. If you want to add. If you do not want to add, then do not add. Okay, right. I'll be making out my very first function, that is div a1. Okay, I'm putting out the brackets. Okay, I'll be putting out the brackets here and the colon. Right, my very first function that I'm making is a1. Right, now what I would just do is that I would just use out a print statement here. Okay, print statement. Now inside this I'll be writing that let's say task 1, put out the colon, and I would just put out these braces because after this I'm just gonna use the function that is format. Okay, so I just want to use the format function. So for that I'm just putting out these curly brackets. So if I basically do not want to use them, I would not put out the curly brackets. Okay, so just write here format. Okay, I would put out the bracket here, and inside that bracket I would just put out the threading now. Okay, threading. So here it goes like the threading. Okay, just let me write out the R as well right here. Okay, this threading, and after that I would just put a dot here, and I would just write here current underscore thread. Okay, threading dot current underscore thread. I will put out the bracket here, I will put a dot, and now here I will be just writing out the name, right? So that will basically help me to print out the task one which we have actually given out here. Okay, now next what I'll be doing is that I'll be adding one another print statement as well. So just write here print, and into the bracket I would just, let's say I would just write that id. Okay, id of task one is, let's say this is the thing which I just want to add here. Okay, put out the brackets here, the curly brackets. I would just come out here, I put out the dot, and I would just use out my format function. Okay, format. Okay, now into the bracket I would just use out the operating system because we want to get out the ID for something, right? So for, in that case I would just using out my OS, that is operating system module. I would just write here get and get PID. This get PID is basically helps us to get out the ID. Okay, as we just want to find out the ID of the task one, so it will basically help us to get out the ID. Okay, so in that case, this is the function that is get PID. It is used to help us to find out the function, find out the ID. And I will put out the bracket like this, right? This is how we will be making out this statement. The same procedure will be followed on for the def A2. Okay, I'll just make out the second function here, come back and here. So def, and here goes the A2. I put out the brackets here, right? Colon, and come on to the next line. In this also I would just write print. Now here I would just work with the task 2. Okay, so here goes the task 2, and put out the colon, the curly brackets, and after this I would just use dot, and here goes the format. Okay, and into the bracket I would be just writing threading dot. Okay, let me just come down so that you are able to see right here. So that is threading dot, and I would just write here current underscore thread. Okay, threading dot current underscore thread, and the brackets like this. Okay, this is how actually we just write. Okay, and after the bracket I would just put out the name here, right? This is actually how we just write out the things, and how, if we just want something we just write it out like this, right? The other thing that I would be just doing is that I just use a print here, and inside the bracket I will just write the ID of task 2 is, and I'll put out the colon and these curly brackets here like this. Okay, and after this I would just use out dot. Okay, dot format, and into the bracket I'll be using out that OS module. Let me come down right here. So OS dot, and that is get. Okay, that is get PID, function that we have used above as well, right? Get PID is basically helped us to use out the function, right? Def A2 and def A1, and this get PID. Okay, now basically what I would just do is that I would be using out and making out my main function. So the calling of these functions I'll be just doing in the main function. But before that, let me quickly give you a recap what I have done. I have made a def function, that is a function that is A1. Okay, sorry, first of all we had imported out the modules, the threading one and the OS, that is my operating system. After that we had made a function that is A1, and inside that we had used out the print statement. That one is my task one. Okay, I just use a dot, and after that I just use a format function. Inside that I just wrote current dot, sorry, that is threading dot current underscore thread name. That will basically help us to give out the task one. Okay, after that I wanted to print out the ID, so in that case I just wrote out that sentence, and in the format function with the help of my operating system module, that is OS1, I just wrote use out the function that is get PID. So that is basically helping me to get the PID. Same procedure I have applied here for the A2 function which we have made. So in that I have printed out the task number 2. Okay, and I've simply used out the format function. Into the bracket I've just given the threading dot current underscore thread and dot name, right? And I just want to print out the ID even as well of the task number 2. So I just use the format function os dot get PID. Get PID is basically help us for getting out the PID of that particular thing, right? Now just defining out my main function. So if underscore, okay, I just not write it like this, I will simply write main and hit enter. Okay, this is how we just define. Now inside this I would be adding out a print statement. So print, and here I'm just writing that ID, put out the colon and put out the curly brackets. Okay, after this I'll just use that format function. Let me come down like this. Okay, format, and into the bracket I would be just writing os dot get PID. os.getPID. Okay, and this is my actually one of the functions. So I'll put out the bracket here. Come on to the next line. Here basically I'll be just writing inside the bracket, and here I'll just write, let's say, main thread. Okay, main thread. So here goes the main thread, right? Okay, main thread, and I would just put out the braces like this for this, right? And I would just even put out the colon if we just want, right? And after this, I would just put out a dot and again use out my format function. So format, and into the bracket, I'll be writing threading dot current underscore thread and put out the brackets and dot name like this. Okay, this is actually how we just write that out. Okay, just let me go once again above. Okay, write this. Now come on to the next line basically. Now what I would just use, I would make the two variables. Let's say one of this is T1. So in that I would just write, with the help of my threading module, I would import the thread here. Okay, with the help of my threading module, I will use out the thread function here. And into the bracket, I would just pass that what is the first target. So my target is basically, first of all, that is my A1 function. That is calling of my function. I would put out a comma here. And after that, I would just write that what is the name. So let's say that is T1. Okay, I would come on to the next line. Here I would be adding T2 is equal to, again I would be adding that threading dot thread, and into the bracket I would be just adding my second target. So my second target is, let's say, A2. Okay, and what about my name? So let's say my name is now T2. Okay, I would just write it like this, T and then 2 here. Okay, this is what I have written. Now basically what I'll be just doing is that I'll be giving out the functions here. So let me just first of all come down this side right here. Now I'll be just using T1 dot start. Okay, T1 dot start actually will help us to start my thread, and here T2 dot start. So that will actually help us to start my second thread, right? And after this basically what I have, I would write T1 dot join. So this will basically help me to execute, first of all, finish up my first thread which is starting executing, right? And here I could add this T2 dot join. That will basically help me to finish up my second execution of my thread. And I would just run this now here for a while. Now, basically just have a look that basically it is giving me the ID is 18788. Okay, main thread is the main thread. Task 1 is my T1. ID of the task 1 is this. Then task 2 is T2, and the ID for the task 2 is this thing. Right, so we had just written out all of these things using the thread, and here basically we had applied out the multi-threading. This is the place. Okay, this is the place where I have applied out the multi-threading, and this is actually how we just do out the multi-threading in the Python programming language using the threads, right? So basically I hope that this must be very clear to you that how we just apply, how we just do basically the multi-threading in the Python programming language with the help of some functions. I just use some function, I just basically use the main function as well, and even I just use some libraries as well, right? So I hope that you have got a clear and a fair idea regarding the multi-threading. Some another multi-threading programs in the threads. Right now I'll be seeing out one another program today, and that will basically consist the classes. It will basically have the classes, the functions, and the main function. With the it basically will consist all of these three things into this particular function, right? So this is the whole idea that we are gonna cover today. Right, let me just begin out here. So the very first thing is that I'll be importing out the threading here. Okay, as I have told previously, and now again I'm just telling you that thing that basically in Python 3 we actually do not import the thread. That thread actually do not work, right? So in that case we just import out the threading in the Python 3, right? So this is the reason that why I am just importing out this this threading here, right? Got the idea? Now basically next what I'll be just doing is that I would be importing out the time as well. Okay, I just want to import out the time as well, so I'm just importing that particular time because this time is one another module that I'll be using throughout my whole program. Okay, throughout my program that I'll be writing, I'll be using out this time module. Okay, right. Now basically what I would just do is that I'll be make out a class. Okay, now just make out a class here. So the name for my class is, let's say, A1. Okay, or let me just give it as, let's say, 1. Okay, 1 is the name for my class, and inside the bracket I am just passing here threading dot thread. Okay, I'll just pass this out here, that is threading dot thread, right? And I will just put out the colon and come on to the next line. This threading dot thread means that I am basically, with the help of the threading module, I'm just going to trying to make out a thread, and that I'm just passing inside the class. Okay, Now here I'll be just making out my init function. So def underscore underscore init underscore underscore, and inside the bracket self will automatically be passed. Okay, that self is basically one of the constructors that I have here. Okay. Now basically what I would just do is that I would put out a comma here. I would just write here id. Okay, and let's say the parameter which I do pass is, let's say id comma name. Let's say I'm just having I as a variable. Okay, let's say these three are the parameters which I have passed inside of my init function. Right, now I would just come on to the next line here. So basically here I'm just importing out the threading. So threading dot thread, and okay, threading dot thread, I would just put a dot here, and I would just define out the init function once again. With it is this is like init, and again this one, and inside the bracket self would be passed because self is my constructor actually that I am using. So in that case basically I would be passing out the self as well. Right, now just write that self dot id is equal to id. Okay, after that I would just write self dot name is equal to name. Okay, and I would just write self dot I is equal to, okay, that's a single one, is equal to I. Okay, let's say these are the three things which I had just passed on with the help of the self. So here I just self is acting as a constructor for me, and that will actually refer to the object name which I will be making outside my class, right? Objects are always declared outside the class, right? So I'm just making that object name outside my class, and there basically the self would be acting as an object name for me, right? Now, basically, I'm just defining out a function inside this class, and let's say that function is run. Okay, now basically, if we just want to run anything here, if we just want to get some output from this particular place inside the class, we always declare the same function, that is run. We do not change out the function name, right? You remember we had already discussed about this thing in a very detail in the previous video, right? Now, I would just write here thread dot, okay, let's say here I'm just writing thread underscore test. That is basically, let's say I'm just going to test out my thread, and inside the bracket I would just write here self dot, and let's say that is basically self dot, I just pass out a name here, comma, after that I would just write here self dot, let's say I, okay, let's say this is self dot I, okay, and after that let's say I just want to pass out a value, let's say that is fine. Okay, let me just come out down first of all right here. Okay, so that same thing I've just written thread underscore test, and basically I've just passed on the things for this particular thing, right? Right. Now basically, what is the thread underscore test? This is one of the functions that I will be defining outside my class. Okay, remember outside my class, that I will be making in a little while. Okay, and instead of this 5, let's say this is 3. Okay, right. Now let's come on to the next line, and now basically here I would just add on a print statement, that print, and here would be percent %s. Okay, percent %s has finished execution. Okay, percent %s has finished execution, and I would just okay, yeah, right here I would just put out a percentage, and that is basically, that will basically contain my self dot name. Okay, so basically what I just want is that as soon as the execution is completed, I should get a result that the first part of the execution is completed, now second execution is completed, and after that now let's say third execution is completed. Okay, this is the whole idea that I actually want, right? So for that same thing, I'm just writing this here. Okay, now I would just come out of my class and define a new function here. As I mentioned, that we'll be using the classes, the functions, and the main function as well. Okay, now that function name is basically thread underscore test that I was writing there. Okay, inside the bracket it would be name. Let's say name is one parameter, weight is another parameter, and let's say I is another parameter which I have just passed on inside this function. Okay, now I would put out a condition that while I, okay, while I, and here I would just write time dot sleep. Okay, and into the bracket wait. So basically what I just want is that within some time, it will be basically within some seconds I should get out my answer. Let's say that first one is executing, then after 2 it waited for 2 seconds, then it is coming, that second is executing, then again waited for 2 seconds, then it, let's say third is executing. Like this I just want the things to appear. Okay, so here inside the print statement I'll be just writing that running percent %s. Okay, and I will just write even the name here as well, person name. Okay, this is done. Now I would just come down here and I would just apply the loop that I is equal to I minus 1. Okay, I just want to go from go to the backward direction, that is basically go from 3 to 1, something like that. Okay, so in that case I'm just defining the I minus 1. And now is the time for defining out my main function. Okay, so here I'll be defining out my main function, and inside that I'll be making the different threads. Let's say T1. Okay, so T1 is equal to what was my class name that I have written above, that was 1, right? So T1 in bracket 1, and let's say 1 comma, and let's say that is thread 1, and here again 1. Okay, same thing for the T2. So T2 is also equal to 1, into the bracket it would be 2. Let's say my thread name is thread, okay, not like this, I just need to put out the semi-quotes, and that is thread 2. I would again put out a comma, and let's say this value is here 2, right? Now let me come down here, I would just add T3 is equal to 1, into the bracket it is 3 comma, and that would be actually thread, okay, let me put out the semi-quotes first of all. So that is thr, okay, thr thread, and here would be 3, okay, without a comma, and here would be my 3. Right, now basically I would just with the help of this object I'll be just starting and joining, right? So T1 dot, I would just write here start, put on the brackets like this. After that T2 dot start, put on again the brackets like this, and I have T3 dot start, again put on the brackets like this. Now that will basically help me to start out my threads, right? Now here I would be just writing that T1 dot join. So basically this will be finishing up the execution for my first thread. Okay, T2 dot dot join. This will basically be finishing up the execution for the second one. And here goes the T3 dot join. This will be finishing up the execution for the third one. Right? So this is actually how we just write out the program. First, let me quickly take a revision, then I would just run out the program. Okay, so here I just wrote import threading and the time. So basically threading is the module which I have imported, and other than that I have imported out the time here. Okay, I made out a class with the name that is 1, okay, and inside that I just passed threading dot thread. So threading is a module which I have imported, and thread is the function from that particular module, right? So here I just use out my init function, and inside the bracket the self was passed. So the self was basically my constructor which we have actually, and I passed on the parameters id and name here, okay, and in the bracket even this I was also passed, right? Now after that I just use again the threading module and my thread function, and I just initialize start, okay, dot underscore underscore init underscore underscore, right? And into the bracket self was automatically passed, right, because this is inside the function. After that, with the help of the self dot id, I just try to access all the 3 parameters which I had made, id, name and I. After that I just made a function that is run. Now you basically cannot change the name of the function here, because whenever we just make the threads inside the classes, we always keep out the function name as run only. Okay, and inside the self was passed because the function is actually defined inside the class, right? And I just wrote thread underscore test as this function which I have made, and into this basically I passed on different parameters, different things, okay, different statements. Okay, this was basically for my time, that is 1. After that basically I just used out my main function here, and inside that main function I just with the help of my class I just made the different objects for that class, and here basically I just gave out the parameters values, that was id, name and I value. Okay, all that I just given here. After that I just started and joined all of these 3 things here with the help of the objects which I have made, and now I would be just running this here for a while. So now basically have a look that what output I'll be getting. I'll be getting running thread 1, then 2, 1, 3, 1. Thread 1 is finished execution, then 2, 3, 2. Then basically thread 3 has finished execution. So this is how you will be getting out the answer, that your first execution is finished, your second is being finished, and basically your third is also being finished, right? So you just have a look at it, the output which we were able to see that came in different time intervals, right? And that was because of this particular wait one which we have passed on here, right? So basically I hope that you have got a clear and a fair idea regarding that how we just use out these functions, these like normal functions, main functions and classes within a same program, right? So this is all for this video. Till then, thank you and take care.